Hi, I really am, according to my parents, Sondra Fechtner, S-O-N. And as a teenager, I decided I needed a nickname. And that's when I decided it would be Sandee with two E's. It's been a little bit of a problem because when I would need to use it for running for an office, I had to use Sondra, and no one in town knows me as Sondra, but I'll take any name you call me. As my dad said, just don't call me late for dinner. Well, I went to college at the University of Delaware. It was just the prettiest cinema site you could want to see. It is now a very large university. It was very small when I went there. I entered with the first class of veterans, 1946. War was over and veterans on the GI Bill were coming back. College was a different social situation. It was much more serious, I think, than it had been perhaps, I don't know, before, but certainly afterwards. With that, I really didn't know at 17 years old what the heck I was going to major in. And my father just said, go to college, go get educated. I understand that. Today I say, too, how at 17 do you possibly know where you're going to be at 30, 40, or beyond? So I started in one field, and my joke was, wait a minute, the fellows were at the other end of campus. I was on the girls' end of campus all the time. So I changed my major, and I became a psychology major with a sociology minor, which just meant go get educated. My senior year, a special man came into my life, and that changed my direction completely. He was already home from the big war after spending 2 years overseas in the Pacific aboard a destroyer tender. I only know stories about it. I didn't know any of that. He was mature at that point compared to this 21-year-old little girl who didn't know what she wanted to do. He decided, wouldn't it be nice? He's the dentist and I will be the school teacher. Well, my 4 sons, 8 years apart, 2 and then 3 and then 3, went to Happy Hill Nursery School with Dr. Goodspeed's wife, who lived in Watchung, and she would pick them up. She was a teacher there, and it was just a darling, tiny little nursery school, and then they started school here, and every year their mommy was always classroom mother. Sometimes I was classroom mother of several classes, but they all turned out to be academically strong kids. Okay, that's fine, I understand that. And then they landed up, 3 out of the 4 of them were accepted into medical school from Watchung Hills, into combined programs. And then the 4th one, we thought for sure would be going into law, and he called up and said, would you give me a little more college? I decided I don't want law. I'm going to take all sciences, and I'm going to try for medical school. So all of them landed up in medical school. Now one's in California, one's in Michigan, one is upstate New York, and one is in Chatham. And coming to Watchung was quite a story. Came up here, one realtor, Mr. Ernest Powlison. He was a retired Boy Scout executive, and Mr. Powlison said, there really is not a single buildable lot that I could offer this young couple. I'd love to have you here in Watchung, but you can't possibly move on that would be the south. The slope faces north, but it's the south side of Valley Road. That's all rock. That's no good. You don't want to go there. I have a piece of property. It's 20 acres. If you can swing that, we will help you develop it. You'll put in a road and you'll subdivide. We have a relatively new master plan that requires 1.5 acres. You'll get 8 lots out of it, and you will get your lot free. Well, as a school teacher and a rather recent dentist after the war, there wasn't a lot of money in the Fechtner's bank account. My father was very helpful, and we bought 20 acres here, $15,000. We put in the road, and we were under the umbrella or care of a councilman who said, I'm here to help you. And his name was Larry Swenson. Call me anytime you have a question. And without an engineer, my husband, Jerry, wrote just, I don't know how he did it, but he had a map. And that's where Cardinal Drive was going to be, and these were the lines, and it was all acceptable because we didn't have the regulations we have now. We said to our realtor, we have no children. We hope to have children. We had 4 children eventually. Would you bring us other people in our age group who kind of look like they're interested in having children too. So we had the most children on one street in all of Watchung. We had the largest bus stop. We had 3 of the daddies on Cardinal Drive on the Board of Education. We had John Berry, Jerry, and John Rothrock. So we were very committed to Watchung. We were very committed to schools since we had children. And little by little, we got more involved. I got involved because I came up here and I didn't know where I was. I came from Newark and West Orange, where the houses were next door, and you walked out and you said hi to all your neighbors. I can walk out up here, and in those days I couldn't even say hi to the deer because they were so skittish. If we saw a deer outside and we were halfway in the house, we all stopped breathing because the minute we moved, the deer would take off. They were so skittish. Now I can go out with 2 tops cymbals, and they just give me, ha, silly lady, of course I'm not frightened of you. Well, as I said, Jerry was a birder. He was a birder since a child. I met him and I knew there were pigeons and robins, but I really didn't even know probably the sparrows, whatever. But if you get married, you teach one another a lot of what you know, and I've traveled far and wide to see birds. I've been up to Newfoundland, I've been down to Aransas and Texas and just lots of places. So he said, well, we can't name it Sandee because this is not sandy land. The land itself is not sand, so let's pick another name. And he picked Cardinal, and I said, Cardinal sounds fine to me, I have no problem. But the League of Women Voters is what put me into Watchung. I went to one of the very early meetings over Vale Lane. Catherine Vanderbeek, an older lady in my mind then, because she was 65, and came up from Plainfield. She had been president of the League of Women Voters there. She's now starting one for Watchung. All women, obviously it was League of Women Voters, though today they have a different charter at this point. But she said to me, and why are you here? She was just a delight. She was raised in China, the daughter of missionaries, and married to Horace Vanderbeek, also the son of missionaries over there. So they had wonderful stories. And I said, I'm here because I don't know enough about government, and I'm over 21 and I'm voting, and I really feel inadequate. And she said, oh, that's lovely. You will be on our board. Well, I didn't know that was like stepping into quicksand. I landed up chairing so doggone many committees over the years, but that was really my growth. Our kids have no place to walk in Watchung except on Valley Road in the street. This is terrible. So all of us said, yes, it's terrible. Okay, Sandee, you will head a study of walkways. We didn't call them sideways, walkways. And we did that. And the mayor said, oh, I'm listening. I think it was Ken Schmidt at that point. I am listening to people talking about a walkway. Okay, I was assigned to a committee that the mayor put together. And that was little baby steps that I landed up getting involved in Watchung, what we could do in Watchung. Board of Adjustment, over my over 40 years, we have had very little women represented for a minute. Maybe one year and they were gone somewhere, I don't know, dropped off or went to do something else. So I really sat as the only woman for a long time. I was a little unaware. I didn't grow up with the me generation. I didn't grow up with the women's lib. And to me, okay, I'm here, what can I do? Well, as I said, I landed up being the hostess of going out and buying the bowl or whatever it was, because that was part of the woman's job. And I thought, okay, I'll be on these committees, I'll put my white gloves on, I'll pour tea. I just didn't see my role as being quite the same as the men. And then some of the men, when I first got on, were intimidating. And I'd look over and I'd say, he's sleeping. He's sitting at this meeting and sleeping. I don't have to be intimidated by someone who sits here and sleeps. So I grew up on the board and I found I had a voice too. I started when there would be an issue. I would go to a mayor and council meeting. The issues have gone away, so apparently I was effective in stopping the movement. Cardinal Drive, intersects with what was the Old Indian Trail. It was called the Old Indian Trail, and it was not paved anywhere along when I moved there. Horseback riders were there. We still have walkers there, but it's paved in certain areas. But one of our councilmen, he decided the best thing to do would be to pave Old Somerset Trail, which is a right-of-way. It was not privately owned, well, it was individually, but right-of-way. And then we could bring in, at that point, Ridge Road had already been developed. It was not developed when I came here. Johnson Drive was still a dirt road in many of the areas when I came here. But there was the trail and getting paved, and he thought it would be wonderful to connect it to Phillips Lane, and then that can connect to Ridge Road, and then people coming off 78 don't have to come down. We can have two parallel streets. And Sandee and Jerry said, oh no, that's not in the best interest of the town. And I cited a community called Radburn, which is over in Fairlawn. Every street is a dead end. Every street's it's just an ideal community for safety and as well as being a neighborhood, because the roads are peripheral, garages are in the back, and it's like a green, a village green. But I argued that, and I was told, you will be sorry, we'll put this through, and you will thank me. And no, I don't think I'm going to thank you for having a thoroughfare up here. So that did die. I was asked to serve on the planning board. And again, my usual remark is, I'll be happy to serve, but do know I don't know anything. And they would say, you're going to learn, which is wonderful. I do believe that. I even learned to cook. I didn't know how to do that when I got married. But there, I was put on the planning board, and it didn't take very long, and I was told, we'd like to put you on the Board of Adjustment. And I said, I haven't learned enough about that yet. Well, this is a whole new board. Oh, this is the more important board, they told me. This is where you don't go with the master plan, but you go with giving the variances. And that's very important that we have a clear thinker. Okay, so now I'm going to be a clear thinker. I thank you very much. And I served on the board. And as I went back and looked at something that I had in my file, it was a letter from the attorney at that time, John Dugan, talking about affordable housing in 1978. It's been fun because I've watched this town grow from areas that had nothing. The whole castle property on that side of the hill had, as I recall, one house that belonged to Stockton Fisher that had a driveway where Hill Hollow is pretty much. One house. This family had in Perthamboy, they made bricks. However, Stockton was an attorney, did a lot of the real estate and taxes, I recall. And Stockton one time spoke to either the League or PTO, I don't know, but the meeting was over at Valley View, and he talked about feeling like he lived on the wrong side. He would look across on this side. This is where the lights were at night. He lived on the side where there were no houses. And now look at that side. It's built up with very substantial homes. I have been concerned about fences. Fence is 4 feet high, 50% open. We have deer, and so we did put in a deer fence. But the original ordinance that the mayor and council were going to pass was you could only put it up to within 10 feet of your property line. So Sandee Fechtner comes and said, that doesn't make good sense because the land, I know you're thinking of a pathway for the deer, but I can't maintain that. And if that land I need to get to, I can't get there. I don't think I should be paying on taxes that are not available on that 10 feet on my acre and a half all around. So the compromise was, okay, you can go up to your property line, but you cannot have your deer fence in front of the house. We're so fortunate to have both lakes. When you realize both lakes are man-made, both lakes are there because of dams on streams. Isn't that lucky? And look what's happening now. With both lakes, people walk around each one. Watchung Lake has a longer history, it's a larger one. So very briefly, Best Pond is what it was called, belonged to the property owned by Mr. Best. So there was talk, an appeal of letting the stream go back to being a stream, and it would be a little bit of wetland, but it would all drain and go somewhere down Stony Brook stream, and then you could have a bigger building envelope. Well, that didn't sit well with town, so that really did get knocked down. But Watchung Lake has also been utilized by the town for recreation. Of course, it landed up, first it was public, then it became a private club. I think it was the McDonoughs had it as a private club. And then the town, luckily, saved the lake. We own it. Town has done a lot of nice improvements in the past, and I hope the mentality continues that let's keep making our town more appealing. Our schools, of course, draw a lot of people here, but our lakes, ponds, they also give people a good sense of living here. We don't have a community center. We don't meet our neighbors. Walk around the lake, you're going to meet your neighbors, but we don't really have a meeting place. Maybe with our new library, we're going to get what I'm hoping we get, where people can come together. And if there's an issue or a happy event, let's all get over there and celebrate something wonderful. There are just so many good things that I see could be developed in town. I've always been involved in my own children's interest or family's interest in education. However, I was not intending to go on the Board of Education. I certainly just supported the interests that our family had, which was pretty much music and arts, because that can get lost. But I had a phone call, a member who was on the board, who said, I have a health issue and I can't be on the board. You've been active in the school. Would you take that position? Would you run for the board? And I said, I'm going to be an empty nester. My youngest is graduating this year. Yeah, that'll keep me with the knowledge that I've gained over having 4 boys go through all those years. How many years were they in high school from the oldest to the youngest? I have a lot of knowledge. And when I have knowledge, then I like to serve. Well, again, I think the biggest job Board of Education members have is the selection of the CEO, the head person, the superintendent. That is so critical. If you have an effective, creative, competent person in that role, you can go home and go to sleep practically. One of the big things I did do, and I was given that task, go for it, Sandee. We went down from 2,000 to 1,000, and we combined superintendent and principal at that point. And that took a lot of research of how that worked in other communities, and then it took a lot of educating the board to accept that concept and educating the school community to accept a concept like that. The other thing, I always had an underlying interest, as I said, of music, the arts, theater. Plenty of support for our athletic programs. They didn't need me to be creative with that. They needed a voice for theater, for music, and I became that voice. And then I woke up in a meeting and I said, our auditorium no longer can support even 1 full grade. We had 400 and some odd seats. We had over 500 students. We can't pull that together. That's not good. We have to have a community meeting place. So it became, oh, here it goes Sandee's auditorium. Sandee's auditorium, maybe I pushed a little harder, but instead of getting an auditorium, we got a PAC. That was beyond what I had ever envisioned. And we got a whole new art center. The arts are big up there now. Our students love being involved in that. And for many of them, that's going to be a lifelong skill, a lifelong interest. But music, theater, arts, that's where my push came in. Very supportive of the years I had been there, and they had a nice party for me, and I have a wall of a lot of citations of different things. Live long enough, people give you citations for many birthdays, I think. But that was beyond what I ever expected. I've done a lot of thank you for your service, and I would get a bowl or a trophy or something and have it engraved. That would be my job on the Board of Adjustment, on the Board of Education. When people retired, I'd go down to the athletic store and get them a jacket, and we would have a little dinner perhaps. But I would say that they really did for me a rather big blowout. I'm very fortunate I'm still involved up at the high school. I'm involved at a different level. I sit in on a Socratic circle every other week, 3 classes through Mary Sock. I was there yesterday, and the discussion was on immigration. And I'm listening to the discussion from freshmen and from junior. What a difference 2 years makes in terms of their growth and awareness. I do miss having a voice. But luckily, I still feel very connected to the high school. I just moved into a different area. Thank you to Mary Sock. Keeps you alive. It keeps your mind going. It keeps you connected. I'm very senior in my life now. I've always had borders of Watchung. I never wanted to work county. It's just Watchung became my home, my community. Oh, as I keep saying, I'm continually growing up, and self-confidence comes in, not being intimidated by other people. It's so easy. One of the things I tell the students now when I sit with them, don't judge yourself by the adult who's putting a grade, a letter, or something. Find your passion and feel good about your own passion. And I'm not a C+ student because I'm not really passionate about math or whatever else you might be studying. You're finding yourself now, but I'm so fearful. I can't find another way to do away with grades, but I think grades are so destructive to our self-image. They're not predictors of how successful your life is going to be down the road, but they sure hinder us when we're young. First thing I would tell anyone is we have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen, learn before you jump in, because your ideas are not yet formed. You don't have background yet. Just give it time to settle in. I found my first year on the Board of Education, they kept using letters and short terms, and I didn't know. I'd write it down later and say, what did you mean by that? It takes time to learn the vocabulary. Lawyers use their vocabularies. Education communities use theirs. I've been to a lot of dental meetings. I learned their vocabulary. You have to learn before you can give back. Someone as young as I am, they think I've aged. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, I'm way up there. I don't hide my age at this point. I am impressed myself with the number of years I've lived. But again, my mother lived to 104 in her own house, so I'm not that impressed. It was a surprise. It was a lovely thing to do. There were others who were also getting it, but I'm the oldest. I seem to be the oldest everywhere I go. How did that happen? Don't destroy the gift you've been given, the gift of life you've been given. You can't always undo your heritage or your surroundings. You know, if you haven't been given decent food, decent education, decent opportunity, you may not be able to have longevity. But if you're given any opportunity to help yourself to be strong and healthy. My desire would be to help them to learn about our community, what we have to offer. And the best I offered her was the library. The library is very homey here, I think partly because it is in a home. I used to pick up at that house for nursery school with one of my children. So that was another committee I had served on with the League of Women Voting. But that is a place for a newcomer, and that's a place you might meet other Watchung people if you're like I am, you talk to everybody. I'm quite aware of. It's come up many years before also saying, well, we could have some financial savings. So far, I haven't seen anything that's going to make a financial savings. We're going to have a superintendent, one, so instead we'll have an assistant superintendent. So we may save 0.00000. We're going to save very little, but what we're going to lose is community commitment. When my kids were there, that was one big happy family. I'd go in lunchtime, there's a superintendent sitting with the kindergarten teacher, and they're having a nice social visit there. It really was a strong community. I went in one time as a high school rep. They invited me down to a luncheon, and I thought it was the moms making the luncheon. No, it was the teachers saying thank you to the parents. That took me by surprise. I'm very happy about that. I am so fearful that we will lose that sense of close community, and we will save in dollars so little. Well, Jerry was a filmer, nature films, dental teaching films. When we came to Watchung, he got very involved. And he was on many committees himself. So I said he was on Board of Ed, he was chairman of the Health Committee, Master Plan. He did a lot of things, and he decided he loved doing photography, and he did a film of Watchung. And then we had a lot of pilots. Our town had United Airline. Pilots used to be up here. So one was Ted Voss, and he had his own little Piper Cub, and he took Jerry up, and his wife was also a pilot, and she said, "Oh, Ted, the door won't lock." And he said, "Well, Cam, you have your belt on, your safety belt." And Jerry said, "Oh, you know, am I really in a plane where the door won't lock?" But in the meantime, he did do aerial, and this goes back probably 1950s, maybe early 60s. So he did a film. We used to show it in Watchung.